Hello and welcome to our friends on LinkedIn. And we want to welcome to our live program today. Thanks for coming out. I'm here with Jessica Dawson. We're talking about daily practices for applying your strengths. Jessica, welcome to the program today.
Thanks so much for having me, Jim. It's always a pleasure to be on these types of calls with you and happy to be here. Welcome everyone that's joining.
It's always great to be here. A couple things, because we do have a live audience, a couple things we'd like you to do in advance. One, drop your top five in the chat room. We'll get a chance to display those on screen. If you're listening to just the audio portion of this, maybe come out and find the video and see that as well. And we'd love to know one theme you're using today, living well. So you can throw that in there, both top five and that question. One theme you're living well. Jessica, let's get to know you a little bit. Can you give us a little bit of what you do for Gallup, a little bit of your background?
Sure. And in the spirit of starting with my top five, I'm happy to share those as well. For those of you who haven't seen them, it's futuristic, relator, activator, developer, and individualization. And I work for Gallup, and I'm based out of uh, my home office that is in Chicago, downtown Chicago. I work in the capacity of being a learning and development consultant. And my role primarily consists of turning Gallup's research and sciences into different learning initiatives. And that's typically done via coaching, via facilitating our courses. And then also, I work with organizations and helping them think through culture change. So, more of that strategy type of work. And I've been at Gallup now for coming up on 8 years. Yeah.
Oh, it's so great to have you today. For those who don't know, I'm Jim Collison. I'm the CliftonStrengths community manager here at Gallup. I get the fun job of working with the entire strengths community and the coaching community. A ranger, woo, maximizer, communication, and activator. And if you know me at all, you know those top five. And I think, today, Jessica, as we think about what we are living well, again, we're encouraging you to drop your top five in chat is we're thinking about that and maybe the theme that we're living well. Let me ask that question of you. Like today, Jessica, what are you using out of your top five and doing it well?
Ah, such a good question. I've been doing a lot of coaching calls today, and coaching always puts me in a spirit of, yes, developing people, but also connecting from the standpoint of just humanity. And, what's interesting about coaching is I get to coach people that are all over the world, all different sorts of industries, but there's such commonalities in what we are coaching around. So I feel like I've been leaning into a lot of my connectedness talent today.
That's great. Well, we're going to make some connections as we talk about this idea of applying your strengths on a daily basis. Can you give us, before we start with some really practical, we have 10 tips for folks today. Before we start with that, can you give just us idea, what does it mean or what does it look like to apply your strengths?
Yeah, it's an insightful start, Jim, I would say, because, when we think about Clifton Strengths and the assessment, it really is a talent finder, right? So it's a
Mm.
starting point, and we can sometimes utilize talent and strengths interchangeably, but they actually mean something different. And so talent is really, you don't have to think about it. It's falling off a log. It's very much your natural tendencies versus a strength, which is going to be more intentional. So I would say when you think about application of your talent, you got to go to that word intentionality. How are we living out our talents on purpose so that we are operating from that strengths capacity? I think it's also focusing on what you want to get done, what you want to accomplish, and particularly focusing on the how as opposed to the what. So you likely will have established the what, but thinking about those Clifton Strengths talent themes, there's 34 of them. Think about them as 34 pathways to excellence, and it's going to really help you to emphasize and with that word intentionality, bring in the how you want to get things done on purpose. And then lastly, I would say it's paying attention to how you feel. When you operate utilizing your strengths, you will operate in the capacity of utilizing what we call the 4 E's. So excellence, ease, enjoyment, and energy. Excellence, ease, enjoyment, and energy. And you can oftentimes feel that energy, that ease, and that'll allow for you to know that there's an alignment there with operating from within that strength zone.
I think that sets a nice kind of platform for us to talk about these 10 ways of applying it. We kind of this is a question we get in our Facebook groups a lot, right? I'm like, how do I make this a daily thing? What kind of
Mm,
things can I do so that this is available to me all the time? What kind of exercises or what kind of activities? So
mm.
Jessica, let's take a second. Let's start with number one. What are these 10 ways that we can really use Clifton Strengths daily?
Yeah, we're getting really tactical, really practical here. I would say these are in no way in any particular order. So just know that we're not ranking these, but these are just some things that you can take with you. But I would say the first thing that we can talk about is this notion of doing a check-in and a check-out. Right. So setting your day with that intention of thinking through, and you can do this in your mind. For some of you that are maybe more visual, you can jot some things down. What do you need to get done for the day? And how can your strengths really help you to accomplish what needs to be completed? And just with that very thoughtful check in, you can begin to craft out what your day looks like, and then I would say in a high achieving culture, high achieving society, we don't always take that pause to do the checkout. So I would say if you're going to do the check in,
Mm.
make sure that you're doing the checkout and really settle into your accomplishments. What did you accomplish for the day? How were your strengths at play? So that could be a really great way to just begin and end the day with strengths.
How is that different than just a list of things to do, Jessica?
Ooh,
How's that different?
yeah.
Because I'm good at making lists. Not sure I get them all done during the day.
Yeah, such a good question. I think it's different because you're bringing in the how. When you think about a list
Mm.
of things to do, it's just the outcomes versus checking in and checking out. You're focusing in on the how. Your natural thoughts, feelings, behaviors will play a part in those to do lists.
Would you think about even maybe jotting down which themes I might be trying to use today to get some of those things done?
Absolutely. I would bring in the themes. You could bring in combinations of themes and start to really unpack what that could look like.
What do you think
Yeah.
from a timing perspective? How much time do you think I should spend on this on a daily basis? Because I think some people maybe get a little carried away, or some people not given enough time. So, what do you think from a timing perspective?
Yeah, I think from a timing perspective, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes should be good enough, And again, it's more of a check in. So listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to what you need. And that's may vary from day to day. From person to person, and also depending on your strengths. Some of us, especially if you've got a lot of thinking themes, this may be something that you really get wrapped up in. So if you know that that's you, maybe you set a timer, right? But I don't think you have to spend a whole lot of time on it. And it's just
Mhm.
like small incremental actions that can help to create a habit and can help you deepen your understanding of your strengths and how you show up.
I love that idea, setting a timer. Like, I think that's just a good habit, anyways. I'm going to spend no more than X, 10, 15, whatever you determine, kind of based on what works best for you. Set that timer, do that planning, then get busy at work. Okay, let's look at number two.
Yeah, so I would say number two is going to be bite sized education moments. I think the very interesting thing about strengths is that it endlessly unpacks.
Mhm.
I took this assessment back in 2011, maybe 2012, and I still have new insights, ahas, and epiphanies weekly as it relates to strengths. And a large part of that is those moments where you get to bake in some education. I think I know you, Jim, have been at the forefront of a lot of these podcasts and things that we do at Gallup, and they have created content for free. And the content, you don't always have to listen to the whole thing. There's a lot of things that are just more so bite-size nuggets, such as themes Thursday shorts, or even rereading your reports. And so wherever you can have some bite-sized education moments are great ways to create that space to have those additional ahas, epiphanies, and further development within yourself.
Yeah, we've actually spent a lot of time over the last couple years taking Theme Thursday and shortening it. Riley, who kind of helps us with these episodes that we do and we produce this way, We've broken them down. So a great opportunity to create a library for yourself. The Theme Thursday channel today on as a podcast are those shorts, so you can go out and get those kind of on a daily basis. Jessica, what do you do when you think about your daily learning habit? What do you do specifically? What do you do?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do a lot of coaching and then I also teach a lot of our course content. So Clifton Strengths is in front of me quite a bit. But whenever there are those ahas and epiphanies that come to me, and you never know when they're going to come to you, I actually jot them down.
Mm,
I do have high input, so I have a really good memory. So I don't even always have to jot them down right away, but I kind of store it away, both in my memory, but then also in a journal. So that's how I capture them. And then in terms of actually listening to our content, I listen a lot to the Theme Thursdays
mm.
still because it's just such rich content.
That's great. And I'm a podcast listener, so I try to catch podcasts in the car or at home to kind of stay up to date on what other folks are doing. Let's look at
Yeah.
number 3.
Yeah. So number three is what I call the healthy pause, right? So going back again to this notion of there's a big difference between a talent and a strength, and a talent is more so your natural way of thinking, feeling, and behaving that you can productively apply versus a strength, which is an optimized version of a talent or your ability to produce nearly perfect performance within a specific task. And you're doing that very consistently. So the difference, one of the other differences between a talent and a strength is talent is more so our emotions. It's housed more so in our emotions, and we do these things without thinking about them. Versus when you're operating from a place of intentionality, you're coming from more of a rational place, right? So whenever you can feel your talents kind of getting out of whack, right? Um, it's always great to take a healthy pause, even if you just need to take step away from the situation for a minute or two and regroup your emotions, regroup yourself to have an understanding of how can I pivot within the situation. Am I actually using and coming from a place that is rooted in strengths, or am
Mm.
I operating more from a talent perspective, right? And I will say that we are more susceptible to this when we are stressed and when we are hungry and when we are tired. So,
I tell you what, I've been practicing some intermittent fasting to just kind of get
oh,
some things
nice.
back in order.
Hmm.
And I realized how much hunger drives. Sometimes I get stressed and I get hungry. And there's a moment
Yes.
there where I have to stop and think. And I think there's some opportunities when we're in the midst of some of these stressful activities that we might be doing to take a step back and say, how can I apply some of my strengths to now push through some of these, right? Might be a talent mindfulness exercise of some sort, just to take a minute or two. We have a whole podcast about talent mindfulness, but I love that idea of taking a pause, figuring out what does pause mean for you. When I'm working from home, I just go upstairs. Like I get away from my computers.
Mm.
I go upstairs, go up on the back deck, and I take a few minutes just to kind of clear my head. So
Oh, I
great,
love that.
great idea, right? Great way of getting out there and getting that done. That works for me. I'd love to hear from others. Maybe you can throw this in the chat room now. How do you take your pause? Like, what does that pause look like for you? And you may not even know you're taking it,
Hmm.
but I think it's great to identify it. So I think that's some great advice. Okay, let's look at number 4.
Okay, awesome. So, number four would be paying attention to hurdles or obstacles that come up for you within your day, right? So it's important to just take a pause here and talk a little bit about what does weakness mean in the Gallup world, right? So in the Gallup world, we defined weakness in terms of Clifton strengths as something that gets in the way of your success. And thinking about that in more broadly, this could be your success, or this could also be other people around you, their successes as well. And we all know that strengths are a lot like tools, or maybe some of you did know that, but strengths are a lot like tools in your toolkit. And in fact, Don Clifton used to talk a lot about the fact that we're carpenters and our strengths are our tools. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but we need to know when to utilize our saw, when to utilize our hammer, when to put our saw or hammer away, right? So whenever you can, um, be paying close attention to hurdles, obstacles, um, that are getting in the way of your success, and starting to identify how is my strength helping me, and also how is my strength hurting me or
Mm,
hindering me. Starting to also recognize the patterns, right, of when your strengths may be hindering your performance. That is a great continued practice. So again, if we're thinking about this from a daily perspective, you can start to understand your patterns more thoroughly when you're paying attention to them, right?
we're getting some comments. I think actually 3 and 4 come together pretty well sometimes because we think
Yes.
about when I have an obstacle, I actually need a pause. Like I need to be able to, I need to take a second, walk away from it, think it through. For me, with a Ranger and Maximizer high, right, 1 and 3, I like to then take a pause and then start thinking, how many different solutions could I come up with to get past this? And I just I
Mm.
kind of start brainstorming in the moment. I call it micro brainstorming, right? Like, and I really enjoy that process. It's a recharging process for me of like more solutions charge me, don't deplete me. I think this is one of those areas, right, where knowing what really helps coming at this, recognizing the it's a hurdle, and we have to work
Mhm.
through it. So, anything else you'd add to that as far as we think about taking that break and viewing a hurdle for what it is?
Yeah, for sure. I love the call out of bringing 3 and 4 together. And I
Mm,
think 3 is more so about kind of checking in with your emotions, right? And then 4 is allowing you to start to, over time, recognize the patterns of when this is happening,
mhm.
so that you can have more of an understanding of the help versus hindering behavior.
Love it.
I love what you just said, Jim, about within your healthy pause, you're actually strategizing. For some people, you may not at a point where you can strategize, you're just trying to catch your breath, and that's okay too. But I go back to understanding, what does the pause mean for you? And then once you have gotten your bearings, again, daily practice, ongoing effort to understand the patterns within your behavior so
Mm.
that you can self manage,
Love
right?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. My favorite. I cheated. I looked through the list. My favorite's number 5. Let's talk a little bit about that, Jessica, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah. So, number 5 is all about recognition, right? So, whenever you can recognize strengths and give recognition to other people, especially, when other people have taken this assessment, it's a way to gain momentum within the philosophy. And here's the thing, even when we are speaking English, like Jim and I are speaking English on the call today, you are listening to us in English, but we all have our own way in which we see the world, right? We all have our own lens. And there is something very powerful that starts to happen when you deepen your understanding of strengths and the philosophy, where you can truly start to understand your lens. And what happens is you can begin to transcend your lens and see other people's lens more clearly.
Mm,
And when you see the lens of someone else and you're in appreciation of it, it's a great time to give some recognition and feedback. It's also a great time for you to realize and recognize what strengths of yours are noticing
mm,
the strengths in other people, right? What
mm.
talent of yours, what strengths of yours is at play. So, again, another way to kind of self study and unpack and understand your lens more thoroughly within the feedback that you're providing.
I love this because Don Clifton would say it's nearly impossible to over recognize someone.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. And we all know, I think sometimes, especially as we think about the last couple years, we're all
Mm,
kind of struggling a little bit. And
hmm.
I think some of the ways to pull out of that struggle, and this is kind of counterintuitive, but is to recognize others. Like in that process, we begin, I think, to get this positive energy that is it's contagious. Well, it's probably a bad word to use, right, after the last couple of years, but it is. It's it's
Right.
it's contagious, it's infectious,
Right.
it spreads, right, all those things that
Yes.
we've experienced with it, right, but in a positive way, right, and it
Right.
energizes people in a way that And I love, as you say, if you can play to their strengths in this recognition, it reinforces those things that they already know, but then they can see it themselves, right?
That's true. And the other thing that might happen is you might actually recognize something in that other person before they recognized it in
Mhm.
themselves. So they
Mhm.
may not always know. So don't make the assumption this person knows. I love that saying that a fish is the last to discover water. That's how close we are to our talent themes. And sometimes it takes other people to recognize that inside of us to spark a talent or to ignite a talent or to maybe even sustain some of those behaviors that we may take for granted.
I love it. We'd say filling someone's bucket. Someone just
Yes, fill
mentioned
your
that, right?
button. Yes.
And we have a book about that, but a great opportunity. I think recognition is a great opportunity to jumpstart this daily idea of strengths. And you can't over recognize somebody, so get it done. Let's look at number
That's
6.
right. You cannot over recognize. Okay, so number 6 is all about the reports, right? So whether you have taken Clifton Strengths All 34 report or even the top 5 report, you get some great intel within the reporting. And we're always expanding, we're always learning new things about ourselves, new things about others, new things about our environments. And so every time you read your reports, you're not the same as when you read it the last time. And so every time you read it, there's a new opportunity to gain something new, a new insight. Um, Even if you're just squeezing out an inkling, right? So continue to read those reports. There's also within the full 34 report a section entitled Take Action to Maximize Your Potential. And within that section, it actually gives you suggestions for strengthening one of your talent themes, right? And so I think that a lot of times when we read our reports, it's easy to kind of put them away and move on to the next thing. But go back to your report, and even if it's not daily and it's once a week, right? It can be really fantastic in terms of your continued commitment to understanding your lens and your strengths.
Jessica, number 7 relates to number 6. So let's dive into that and we can talk about them together.
Yeah, for sure. So, number 7 is all about being mindful of those new insights, right? That have come up for you and having a way to capture them. So I talked about this earlier that I keep a journal, right? But there is such continued learning within this journey, right? There's such nuance, there's such intricacy, and we didn't even we're not even talking about the fact, or we haven't even touched on the fact that your strengths don't operate in silos; they're always working in concert with each other, right? So theme dynamics. So you never stop learning. The other thing that I would just say about development is that it's not a linear progression. I often will coach people that go through our Clifton Strengths courses, and it's interesting to hear the continued learning that has ensued well past digging into their strengths, right? So you never know when you're going to have the aha, an epiphany, a new discovery. And sometimes, development and learning can feel a little bit messy. So having a place to capture your learning um, can be great to then coming back to that learning, to those insights, and rereading them. What happens when you reread them is that you will have more insights and more discoveries.
One of the things I see a lot in our community is folks say about the reports, well, yeah, I've done that already. And I kind of want to say, well, do it again. It's actually not bad to go, oh, I read my report or I went through my insight guide. And you say, well, do it again. How long has it been? And do it again. There may be some, I think there's some value in repetition, I guess is what I'm saying there, right? The report doesn't get old right after you read it, right? There's always insights to be had there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
that's great.
absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, so don't, because you've done it once. I mean, especially if it's been a while, go back and do it again. I love, combine these two together, 6 and 7. Take your reports, find the action plans, review them often, take some notes, right?
I'm loving seeing your talent in action, Jim, in terms of arranging. It's like, oh, we can group these things together. We
Oh
can do
yeah.
this together. I,
Yeah,
I
well, and
love
I have
seeing your talent.
high activator too, so I'm like, get this thing done, right? All right, let's look at number 8.
Okay, so number 8 is all about using the language of Clifton Strengths, right? So we often talk about the fact that this is a scientific common language, right? And what do we know about language? You actually want to be utilizing the language. You want to be speaking it as much as you can. Obviously, this is easier to do with other people that have also taken the assessment. But even if not, there's something just about speaking about what you've learned, speaking about your lens to other people who haven't maybe even taken it. But the more that you can use the language, the more that you can practice and have a better understanding about how your strengths are showing up for you, and get into the habit, right, of within your daily interactions bringing it in when it makes sense. It's also a great way to keep Clifton Strengths top of mind.
When we think about the language, just you said that the language of Clifton Strengths, how important is that to internalize that language to for yourself, right? We have some definitions, we have some ideas, but how important is that to really internalize that language for yourself?
Yeah, I would say it really does help with solidifying and cementing that these are all pathways to excellence.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times what happens is people will get caught up in a label or a word within their full 34, and we want to break that habit, right? And so um, I almost will say sometimes it's about ignoring the Webster's definition of that word
Hmm.
and diving into what it means within the Clifton Strengths philosophy. And the more that you can utilize it and explain it out, I think it's quite important, especially
Hmm.
as you continue along this journey. And eventually you're going to know all 34 talent themes. You'll be able to um, use them and talk about them. But on your way to that kind of know-how, kind of expertise, if you will, of the language is a great habit to
Yeah,
start to utilize. Yeah.
I totally agree. Make that your claim it, right?
Yes.
The name it. Let's get beyond name it and let's claim that for what it really
Let's
is for
claim
us, right?
it. That's
Let's
right.
let's jump to number 9.
Okay, so number 9 is about asking for feedback when you can. So there's something so powerful about sharing out your Clifton Strengths reports, and also just your strengths in general with other people. And it's great for having a fuller picture of how other people see you. So you may start with people that you know, like maybe a spouse or parents or a best friend. Show them your report and see what they say. For a lot of people, they will either clarify, or I would say maybe even solidify some things that they already know. But for others, they may emphasize some things within your report that maybe you glanced right over, right? And
Mm-hmm.
also you can look for other ways or other openings to share out your Clifton strengths with other people as well. That might be a new partnership that you're starting, different teams that you're working on, etc. So whenever you can, share a little bit about yourself, your working style, how your strengths show up for you, and then getting that feedback. It's important so that you can understand how other people see you as well, and
Mm-hmm.
have that little bit of that reciprocity within the feedback and
Yeah,
sharing.
and that feedback may come through number 5, which was recognition, right? You may
Yes.
listen to those clues in the recognition and bring that in, right? Take a note of that. Jessica, we are running short on time, so let's quickly go to number 10.
Okay, sounds good. So number 10 is all about think about longer term goals or objectives that you want to achieve, and how your Clifton strengths can be helpful, right? So daily, if you can think about your longer term goals, it's always great. But continuing to get into that space of reflection and continuing to unpack how your strengths can help you, it's a great way to ensure that you're not optimizing to the fullest capacity your Clifton strengths within your trajectory of reaching those goals.
I think both we started with short-term goals of the day. We end with long-term goals, right? We got kind of come full circle. Jessica, thanks for taking a few minutes today to sit down. Always great to be with you. I don't get to spend enough time with you. Always great to do that. And thanks
Yes.
for coming on today. I will remind individuals, Jessica and I got together last year and put 22 of these together. And so if you
Yeah.
haven't heard that yet, go to gallup.com, search 22 ways. That's all you need to do. 22 ways. It'll be the top result that comes back. And we've got more ideas for you as well. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you coming out and being a part of it. We've got plenty more of these. So follow us wherever you can. Thanks for coming out. And Jessica, again, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.